I'm Elliot Young, one of the co-chairs, and Taji.
Yeah, Taji Chestnut, the other co-chair.
I see Anne.
Ann Campbell, PCCEP.
Amy.
Yeah, evening. Amy Anderson, PCCEP chair of the subcommittee behavioral health.
Vadim.
Hey everybody, Vadim Mazursky, PCCEP member. Good to see everybody.
And Kia.
Good evening, everyone. Kia Myers-Dugan, PCCEP member.
And then Claudia.
Hi everyone, my name is Claudia and I am the project assistant for PCCEP. Welcome and thank you for being here tonight.
Theo.
Hello everyone, my name is Theo Latta. I'm another PCCEP staff member. Thank you all for being here.
And Judith.
Hi everybody, I'm Judith Mowry. I'm one of the team members who support the PCCEP.
Okay, so we've got a pretty packed agenda today, and actually under that last chunk of creating the December agenda, there's some items that we're going to need to have some discussion about. Barb on the Behavioral Health Subcommittee is asked to talk about the BHU unit, and so we need to talk about that. We also need to talk about the settlement agreement report by PCCEP, which by my calculation needs to be done at the December meeting if the hearing is coming up in January. So we need to think about the dates. But anyway, we will get to that as we move quickly through the agenda. So I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair Taji to lead us through the next agenda item.
Sure. Quickly, also the date. I think we were all trying to figure out what it was, and I got it confirmed yesterday. It's February 25th. Yeah, thanks, Jared. Yeah, as well. So we technically have January available to us if we need to push anything that's not super pressing for the month. Just noted for that, for when we talk about the agenda. Yeah, so let's start with the Truth and Reconciliation Subcommittee. From the last time that we met on that, which was, oh gosh, I want to say like 2 weeks ago, we were discussing more in detail around how we could connect to the, I think it was OMF, is that the correct acronym? It was one of the City of Portland's internal folks we were trying to connect with. Vadim, if you know the acronym more than I do, anyone knows?
I think you're right, yeah.
Okay, cool. We were trying to connect with them to better strategize how we could move forward with the subcommittee, whether or not it should be something housed in PCCEP as another subcommittee, whether or not it should exist as its own on its own feet, what communities we should be outreaching to sit on that committee, as well as if it should be something that is solely focused on PPB's, a Truth and Reconciliation Committee focused on PPB, focused on policing more generally, or if it should be something that's bureau-wide. And I think we decided to focus it on PPB from the last conversation. Other decisions that were sort of made on that, I can't remember or have notes on any other decisions like that were made. I think the next meeting is tomorrow or something on it. So there could be more discussed then.
Yeah, tomorrow is the meeting at 3 with the mayor's office and others to talk about, what they have in mind and what services and support they can provide for that. And more talking about what it would look like and who would be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I thought it was about the meeting with a spot person to see how they can support us from OMF and what they need. I think short term, they may not be able to support us from what I'm understanding from the emails at least, but at least if they can sit in and provide help down the road, but to learn what spot does, the special something.
Yeah, I mean, basically trying to best figure out once, Bob, you can ask the question once. The other part that we were talking about was like, how do we best decide on the membership of that committee? If it is something housed within PCCEP, do they go through the typical PCCEP application process, and then is the committee who decides who's on the committee? So basically, a committee to decide the committee might need to exist, or that's sort of what is quasi-existing right now. And is that your question, Barb? Who's included? Oh, okay. Wait, sorry. Okay, who is included behavioral health or just a race, whatever? Yeah, so no, it's not focused specifically on race. I believe it's truth and from my understanding, it's truth and reconciliation on all fronts. I'm thinking it's talking about a truth and reconciliation policing in general from the community's perspective. I guess is built on, and I wasn't in the conversations before like two weeks ago. So if there's more background on it, anyone wants to share. But from my understanding, it would be more generally about truth and reconciliation from the community and what sort of dialogue needs to occur to repair harm that's been caused. Does anyone else want to add to that?
Vadim, do you want to? We've been talking about it for a few months in our settlement subcommittee, and how to proceed and who should be involved and all of those things.
Yeah, and honestly, the focus has been race so far. It's been with the Racial Equity Subcommittee as well as the Settlement Agreement and Policy Committee. That not necessarily is it limited to that, and certainly once we bring community members on board, you know, we'd be open to any thoughts on that, and you know, want to let the community take the lead. So yeah, the reason I wanted this on the agenda, if I can just interject really quickly, is what are our first steps? You know, I think if for us to form a subcommittee, we need to have some sort of PCCEP agreement or vote on it. Here's a new subcommittee, here are members. It would seem like we should form a subcommittee, and then the members on that subcommittee can start reaching out to the community and bringing people on board with the help of, you know, the mayor's office or otherwise. But I don't know whether anybody has any views on what the first couple steps would need to be. A vote on the next subcommittee, next full meeting to start the subcommittee and have people join it, or are there other alternatives that y'all can think of for that?
Yeah, and to answer your question, Vadim, I think that like I was sort of alluding to, and you sort of solidified that, but yeah, some sort of committee might make sense. And I think the reason it hasn't officially, the reason I don't think there's a consensus on it yet is because I don't know if from the mayor's office and maybe even PPB's perspective of whether or not it's something housed within PCCEP, because if it is, then it would make sense to do a committee, but if it isn't and it's something outside of it, then we maybe just need to be, you know, part of that part of the group of people that wouldn't need to be like limited to PCCEP's people in the conversations. Does that make any sense?
Well, I think, oh, can I just interject? On the recommendation that was signed by the mayor, he added the part that he wanted a subcommittee on this truth and reconciliation. He wanted PCCEP to create another subcommittee. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, then yeah, Barbara, what's up?
I'm just a little confused because I thought at some meeting in the past, I don't remember which one, people decided that it was too big of a project for PCCEP because you needed people that had done it before. Judith was saying so it wasn't reharming, and that it was like a really bigger project that you as volunteers couldn't really do. So I'm just wondering, has that changed or?
So that's why.
Right, Barbara. That's the initial part, is that we are just trying to form a committee to get the people on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And so this is just the beginning part where we set the framework, get people involved, and then hand it off to the people that will actually be doing the work. So exactly true, but this is just the initial steps.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was my understanding too, Barbara. And so I mean, the PCCEP's role will be launching this, but not, I don't think it'll be a PCCEP project once it's up and running.
Right.
Okay. And so I think it might be in the interest to, and it would be a body, to further that question, Barbara, like I think it won't be limited, like we'll have folks on there from the city, and we'll have folks from PPB, sort of multiple different like stakeholders convening on that like set group to put together the commission. Does that need to be a formal recommendation of the PCCEP? That's another question though. I think that Vadim was trying to raise.
I think if we create a subcommittee, then it needs to be like.
Well, it'd be like a special subcommittee. It wouldn't be like I mean, just to use like the terms.
It could be an ad hoc task force
Yeah, whatever you want a fun, lawyer terms.
We
or
can
whatever.
come up with some. I think that's better than an official subcommittee.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
subcommittee assumes that this is sort of a permanent thing.
Yeah.
I'm just worried about bandwidth for people on PCEP. Obviously, there's a lot of momentum and energy behind this, but I'm aware that all of the people involved are also involved in lots of other things. So just to be aware of, like, taking on even the launching of this is going to be a lot, it seems
Right.
like.
It seemed from what the mayor's response to the recommendation was, is that I guess I don't think he obviously I think he understands that there's a lack of capacity and bandwidth for the PCEP to run it. And so maybe discussing that tomorrow at the meeting about ways we can potentially have more support from the city. Maybe I mean, I know we appoint people for it from the city's or from the mayor's office, but like they already said that OMF and Spot might not be able to help us right now. So maybe getting someone who actually can help us in that might be a good start, just so we don't get too like in the weeds of everything and we're already like, stretched. So that could just be what we bring up tomorrow, and we don't make a decision today about, or we could make a decision to vote on a special committee at the December meeting, and that just could be striked off the agenda if we get way more support from the city. And then we can still have the special committee. Let's just probably do the special committee, and then based on the meeting tomorrow, we'll know how much work we're going to be invested in it as a committee.
I just have a quick question, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm not really familiar with process, but when the mayor did say he wanted a subcommittee, in the past, is that what is done? That if because we serve, on his committee, I'm looking at others that have been here longer, do we just create something like that, or how does that work? And back to also what you were saying, that issue was brought up, that it's a lot of work, and so we do need support from the city, so for that work to go forward. So that's partially what tomorrow's about as well.
My understanding is we're not the mayor's committee. We're an independent body that is appointed by the mayor. So I don't think he's, my sense is they're not wedded to it being an official subcommittee. They just want a group of PCEP to launch this thing. Like, I don't think they would care whether it's called a subcommittee or a task force or a special committee. So I think we're in alignment, whatever we do.
Awesome. So I think we will, Vadim, unless you wanted to add something else to that, sorry.
No, I'm in agreement with Elliot. I think we can do whatever we want to do technically, but I think it's just tidier if we take a vote, unless anybody feels otherwise. If we wanted to form any other subcommittee, we'd probably take a vote. So why not this one?
Yeah, I don't think it would. We can note it as like a special or ad hoc or whatever you want to call it to make it differentiate it from a subcommittee. And so we'll put that on the agenda for the December meeting, and we can go to the next agenda item, which I also will be talking about, which is the coalition, or unless there's other comments on that, but please let it be known. There was the second part is the CAG, which is the Coalition of Advisory Groups. So this is something that was recently led by, I don't know if you remember from the November meeting, Officer Natasha did a presentation, and one of the things mentioned was this, and it's also, I believe, on the 19-point agenda or plan or whatever. The 7 advisory groups have created a CAG, which is the Coalition of Advisory Groups, and they have not been codified, but they apparently at the meeting today that Anne and myself and Marcia attended, the Alliance for Safer Communities, apparently they have the potential to be codified within city code. And so that's another thing that's going on. And the reason I mention it is that we have been trying to repair some harm that was apparently caused between the advisory group, or some of the advisory group members, and PCEP. And so there was a point of attention I wanted to bring to the steering committee, and know that there will be a meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. with Sean about that, and trying to figure out a time to meet with the rest of the CAG members. However, at the meeting, and I remember him saying 7 different advisory groups, the Slavic, the Alliance for Civic Communities, TAC, Latino Network, Behavioral Health, Muslim, and then apparently the creation of another one, the Equity Advisory Group, which I don't know what that would do. What I'm interested in asking and raising to the group here today is, I guess, like they were saying two things was the reasons there was issues. One was that, oh gosh, what was both of them? One of them was that there was the recommendation that was put forward about analyzing and getting more info on what the advisory groups do. And then the second point was on, and do you remember what the second point was? I feel like it was a little like convoluted.
No, I don't. I was trying to understand what the rub was. No, I didn't. I'm sorry. I didn't.
I mean, Elliot, you were also there. I was trying to, I mean, what is everyone's general feedback just from that? I don't know what to do moving forward to like sort of, so I think there was a lack of communication or miscommunication around the recommendation. There was also like folks feeling like we didn't do enough outreach to those groups. Barb, that was the Alliance for Safer Communities. It's the LGBTQ advisory group for the PPP.
Yeah, I think I wasn't at the ASC meeting today, but from the previous conversation with Sean, I think the issue is that some of the advisory groups feel like we've not been in touch with them, and part of the reason we've been in touch with them is to contact them if you go to the PPP website where they're listed. So I think we need to figure out what their contacts are, figure out when their meetings are, see if we can delegate different people to go to different meetings. I've been going to the ASC meetings, and I'm happy to go to the Latino Network meetings. Vadim volunteered to go to the Slavic meetings. So I think that going to their meetings and inviting them to ours will go a long way towards getting on the same page and repairing this sort of miscommunication that happened.
Well, Elliot, if I may, when I first joined PCCEP, I went to the police website to look at all those advisory committees, see who was on them, read the minutes, try to get caught up, and half of them were no longer meeting. They weren't even formed, anymore. So I was kind of confused about which ones were still going on and which ones, were not. But if you go in and read the minutes, they didn't have a lot of meetings. So I don't know what all they said they put together, but it's not on the website.
Well, yeah, I think the website is not an accurate reflection of anything because the Latino Network is not even listed there. And apparently,
there we go.
It is. So that's a problem. Maybe Mary Claire, I don't know who's in charge of that, but like that needs to be rectified because it's hard for us to communicate with groups that don't have a public presence.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, and I think, just for some historical perspective, I think what's, the glitch was that one of the subcommittees initially had a recommendation that the Bureau do an audit, and I asked you to change the word, and it became a review of the advisory councils and to determine whether they were serving any purpose or value to the Bureau. And I think that, didn't go over very well with them. A lot of these committees have been around for a long time, and, you're right, there may not be a lot of information on all of them on the website, but a number of them are very active. I think they're actually becoming more active these days. And I think they sort of took it, and I'm sure you will hear because I've heard the TAC groups say too that, they took some offense that, PCCEP, thought that they weren't of value just because of that particular recommendation. But I think that's sort of been worked out and just a matter of, the need to communicate with each other. You all have different functions. You all serve a purpose, but they're different purposes. And they just want to, be sure that everybody, recognizes that, that they have, a value as well. So
Mary,
then.
can I ask a question, Mary Claire?
Yeah.
So for example, like today I went to the Alliance for Safer Communities one, and they had a really awesome presentation from the new director of Portland Street Response, super helpful, and I'm assuming we'll probably get it at PCCEP at one point. But you know, towards the end is sort of where they focused in on like the LGBTQ specific advice or
Right.
parts that align with the PPP, and they were like talking about like getting updates on specific bias cases that occurred related to, you know, race or gender identity or sexuality. Is that the general idea of what? Oh gosh, sorry, that interrupted me. Is that the general like what each of the advisory groups do? Is they, you know, or do they all have different things that they do? Because I'm the reason that it still is not, you know, the reason I'm still confused a little bit is that, you know, community policing does, of course, matter in having these dialogues between these different communities and having conversations with each other. I'm just wondering what those conversations sort of, is it holding them accountable to those communities? Is it to recommend things based on like what the community needs, or is it just,
Sure.
Yeah, I was just wondering
And
a little bit.
You know, I think years ago, you know, we sort of created them and sort of staffed them and sort of directed that thing. And, you know, based on, you know, 21st century policing. And I think actually this was related to all of you in the response that we had, that the chief sent in to your recommendation, is that of late, we've taken a different approach to these and decided to let them be more organic, let them determine what they are. They represent different communities that we want to hear from. And I would hope that you would too. So we let them sort of organize themselves, determine their own agendas, let us know what they need from us, or what, you know, how they want to, you know, engage with us. They bring their particular community's concerns or needs to the Bureau through their various, you know, or separate committees and stuff like that. And, you know, to the point about being able to know what others are doing, that's why we, you know, created the CAG, as you referred to it, because I think probably more than a year ago, as part of our community engagement plan, we determined that it would be good for the chief to meet with the chairs of each of those committees so that they could share their the universal, you know, stuff that they wanted, so they could hear what each other was doing or what their issues and concerns were, and then, you know what each one was working on, so if there were opportunities to work together or whatever. So we created that CAG so that there is now, you know, although they're all, you know, separate and they continue to, you know, focus on their particular community's needs, there is also this forum which meets very regularly. I think it's meeting every 2 weeks at the moment, with the chief or, you know, some representatives from the chief's office to, you know, share their thoughts. You know, they can ask questions, they can ask for presentations, whatever. You know, it just varies depending upon, we let them, you know, sort of tell us what they need from us rather than directing them.
What I observed today is that there was a lot of talk about the intersectionality of the different groups. And I think that would be, if there's a way, like we had talked before, that some of us going to different advisory groups, I think is good. And I was confused a little bit if they had one big group meeting. Do they have one meeting where? No. Okay.
That is, at least at this point, they have not done that. I'm not to say that they couldn't at some point, you know, have a big thing, but right now they have their own separate council meetings, and then the chairs or their designated representatives go to the CAG meeting, which is only, you know, 1 or 2 per committee, whether it's their chair, co-chair, or, as I said, a designated.
I ask you, Mary Claire, could you send to either Theo, Taji, or myself the contact information for each of these committees so we could reach out to them?
Sure, and I actually have done that in the past, so I don't know what happened to that, but originally when that recommendation,
Was what was sent to Marcia?
Yes, Yep. So
You just follow up with her. You don't have to send it to us again.
No, but I can update it because since then, I'm not sure that the Latino Council was on there, nor the Equity Council. So I will certainly look to see and get you their, chair's names so that you can contact them.
Yeah, and I think the other section of the recommendation, from my understanding, is about like how does those different perceptions and different information, questions, and concerns that each advisory council individually shares with PPB, how does that change anything within PPB? I think that's really the essence of what led us to want to create the recommendations. Like, we would love there to be these advisory groups and for them to share from their community those things. Yeah, no. I mean, so I'm sorry. I meant to say, like, we don't have, there's no issues with the idea of the creation of them or any problems with all those communities being represented and having the coalition's amazing. It's like, how do each of those coalitions change or enact things and change what PPB does within their bureau? And so that's sort of where I personally sort of saw issues. Like, there's no evidence or on the site, obviously. I'm assuming there's great stuff.
But, but I don't know that that's for us to say. I mean, and I think that's why you need to be reaching out to them and having some collaboration, because we're not going to tell you what they get from us. They should be telling you how, I mean, I don't want to speak for the committees as to whether they think we're responsive to them. We hope we are, and I think we are. But if you want, information as to what they've brought to the Bureau and whether we've acted on some concerns they have, I think the best place to get that from is from the members of the committee. So I think that's why it's imperative that either, you can either go or invite them to your meetings or what have you, or get some kind of movement going, because, I certainly don't want to speak. They certainly can well speak for themselves as to whether they've been satisfied with the Bureau's responses to any questions or concerns. But, for example, they wanted, the Hispanic wanted us to, or I don't know whether it was the Slavic Council or one of the councils wanted us to speak to some refugee, women about domestic, violence or whatever. And so we did that at their request or whatever. So there's things that they ask as, councils that we do, and I'm sure they could share that with you. And if they're not, if we haven't done something, I'm sure they'd share that with you too. But I think it's best to, approach them or set up a relationship if you want to, get that kind of information.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Mary Claire, for sharing on that. And
I have a quick question for you. When you asked your question about the advisory committees, are you looking for like policy changes, or are you looking at like maybe in the moment type of change?
From my understanding, I'm not responding for Mary Claire, but I think they've done, like, from the meeting we were at today, they were talking about like a specific case and they were like raising it from their own community. And I'm assuming each of them do varying degrees of things similar to that. I don't know about how much policy specific work they do, but I know that was also one of the critiques they had of PCCEP, was that we were too critical, which was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Critical.
I don't know, Taji. I think part of it was when the recommendation said no council should be created until, you guys had done something. I think they, thought that was because, frankly, the Latino community council had already been, started before you made that recommendation. But, and the Equity Council has been in the works for a while too. And the idea, I think you just have to be careful about this council trying to tell these communities whether in fact they can form, councils, or, advisory councils or not. I think that was part of the thing, is that might have rubbed a little bit the wrong way too.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, all of these councils, including, PCCEP, have their roles in advising the police and advising the mayor or what have you. But they, all have, the right to exist and to, and to function as they, as their bylaws or whatever. Most of these advisory councils have created their own bylaws, so they operate on their terms. So, and, we think that they do serve, a purpose and have value to the organization as a whole. So we certainly intend to maintain those advisory councils as well. So.
No, of course. Thank you so much for sharing again on that info. And I'm excited to talk tomorrow with Sean and hopefully work on fixing some of those things and clarifying things and trying to better prepare things and not have any issues amongst all this great work happening. I don't want to, stay on this subject too long. If there was other questions or thoughts on this, we can, please share them, or we can go to the next agenda item, which I think Elliot will be leading us on.
Okay, seeing none. The next item is our annual report and PCCEP website, and this has been the PCCEP website. We've talked about the various issues with. Theo has been hard at work and has done a third and fourth quarter report, a draft of which he sent out to some of us just before or earlier in the afternoon. So Theo, do you want to talk about the report and the website and then get some feedback from folks?
Yeah, I'd love to. Do you mind if I share the screen real quick? Are you all cool with that? Okay. So, can you all see that? Okay. I'm going to take silence as a yeah. Oh, this is the one this was the one before. Hold on. So, well, while I'm pulling this up, just to give a little bit of background on the PCCEP quarterly report, they are in the settlement agreement. It's taken, I don't think PCCEP has done one for over a year. In the past, PCCEP members have done this because it's important that it comes from like a PCCEP voice, but because nobody wants to add to the tremendous work of PCCEP members, staff did this one. So PCCEP staff, we can't really speak with the same voice of PCCEP members, but we did the best we could. Okay, there it is. So I'm just going to run through this real quick, and if you have questions, stop me. So this is in accordance, it's just a statement. This is quarter 3 and 4, July 2020, December 2020. It discusses team building as the first one. The team building exercise, I guess we call it a retreat, was September 30th. That is the only real PCCEP meeting that has all of PCCEP membership there that's private. It's just made as a way to build teams, resolve any issues as they arise, and just to have a conversation and share a meal. That's been all virtual, as everything has been virtual these past 6 months. I talked about the training. PCCEP gets training, obviously, from AMAC and MHA, as well as the DOJ, Mary Claire, the city attorney. And then I talked about the general meetings a little bit. So obviously all meetings from July 2020 to December have been exclusively via Zoom and observation of physical distancing. And then I talked about the recommendations. I gave brief overviews of the recommendations. I talked about the past statements, and then I gave the statements in quotation. Talked about the directives reviewed. I'm going to move through this a little bit quicker, I guess. More recommendations, the discussion on codification, the discussion on the metrics, and all of these have links to the actual substantive piece itself. This is also, just for a little history lesson, this is much longer. So they wouldn't always have to be this long, but this is much longer than they have been in the past because it's inclusive of 2 quarters. And then the directives, more statements. And then just more recommendations. And then talk about the subcommittees. So section 3 is the subcommittee meetings with agendas. So in that little blurb right there, the mayor charges PCCEP with forming its 5th subcommittee. Then we talk about the youth subcommittee, and then those are the meetings with the agendas. The behavioral health subcommittee, meetings with agendas. Same with all the rest of the subcommittee, racial equity, settlement agreement, and the steering. And Taji, you've been chair for just over a month now, but you're on that as well. So I didn't know if you all wanted me to do that or not do that, but I did it anyway. So I put that we filled vacancies timely. I don't know if y'all agree with that. This is your report, so you can change it however you want. So I said that as of December 2020, all 13 seats are full. There's 3 alternates. And then I go down to challenges. Maintaining an adequate pool of qualified diverse alternates. We only have 3. I also mentioned that 3 members have resigned since July of 2022 due to moving, and 1 because his work stuff increased. I talk about the PCCEP website. The citywide website migration is difficult to navigate. PCCEP staff created an Excel document for tracking purposes on the website, but it is not a good substitute or replacement for a functional and user-friendly website. So once the city migration gets done, then hopefully all city websites will be a little bit better and more accessible. But for what we have, that's been a big challenge for PCCEP staff. I talk about the workload. PCCEP members are volunteers who make an enormous time commitment. Obviously, you all know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't. I talk about COVID-19 restrictions. Yeah, it's just about social capital, basically. Officer input and attendance during meetings. So there's rarely any rank and file officers in these meetings. Marcia sent out an email. Lakiana actually messaged me during this meeting to follow up and to ask that officers be asked to come for the next Thursday racial equity panel. I think it is important for PCCEP to ask rank and file police officers to show up, and not just important for PCCEP members to ask them to show up, but for them to be encouraged by the police commissioner to speak freely and openly and candidly without fear of retaliation of any kind. I think that's really important to say. I mentioned timely responses as a challenge, just that PCCEP needs more timely responses as well as documented next steps. And I think this is one of the crucial pieces, and I'd be happy to expand on this. Am I out of time, Elliot? I don't want to go too much over time.
You're good. Just, yeah, I think we'll keep it moving and then we'll get to discussion.
So next steps. So that's one of the, so PCCEP, I talked about this in a meeting earlier, but PCCEP as a relatively new committee has had to find the process of recommendation. And I think part of what PCCEP has identified as one of the big hiccups is that PCCEP will pass a recommendation, and then it's accepted by Mayor Wheeler or the chief of police, and then PCCEP doesn't know what happened. So I think identifying within the recommendation that these next steps need to happen for this recommendation to be accepted. It can't just be an acceptance. These next steps have to happen. And I think putting that into the recommendation will serve PCCEP as a whole better. So I'd like to include that, but I'm not you, so I won't speak for you. But I think that's one of the most important parts of the recommendation process. PCCEP is only a couple of years old, getting to know itself, but that part is crucial. Really pushing the mayor and chief of police to force next steps. So can't just accept the recommendation just to accept the recommendation. We need next steps involved in the recommendation process. Community attendance. So PCCEP used listservs, social media, all kinds of stuff. It's tough for everybody in times of COVID, but it was tough for PCCEP before that. actually, the PCCEP numbers have gone up substantially in times of online meetings. So that's something, and especially with increased attendance after the murder of George Floyd and the nightly protest in Portland. And then there's just special meetings after that. And then I mentioned the data requests. You referred to one earlier. That's the link to the formal request. And then recently, Lakiana made that request of those 6 items for PPP. So that's the quarter report. And you all can edit it however you want. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thank you.
Were all the recommendations that were passed in the quarter 3 and 4 put in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for doing that work. I think it's really great. The couple of comments I have to make. One is because we haven't done a report in a year and a half, I think it would be really good to do the annual report. In other words, to do quarter 1 and quarter 2. So we could, I think we'll still be missing half of 2019, but at least we could end 2020 having encapsulated all of our work, especially since we did a lot of work in June with special meetings. So if you're able to do that, I also think we need to, if this is going to be an annual report, sort of have it published in January after, wait for December for us to do whatever work we're going to do in December, and then publish it either by the end of December or after that. But the other thing, you've done the work of summarizing the listening sessions, and I thought linking that to the report would be really helpful as well, just so it's in one place.
Yeah, to follow up on that, I think I have more time in the month just without college, so I can help out with the first 2 quarters if you need the support, Theo. Might not be as great of a writer as you, but I'll try. And then I also think that some of the things in the comments that were really great, I liked Barbara's comment about including information about more of the numbers of things, just so, reports often have numbers in them, and I don't know if typically we could somehow, throw a chart or 2 in there, not, just with what sort of things came out from from those different special sessions. And I also think it might just be in the benefit to just link a lot of the recommendations and do like they do in the state legislature or federally, they'll do a summary sentence of each of the recommendations. Obviously some are more intense than others, so it might take 2 or 3 sentences, but doing that so we could save space and just avoid also attendance numbers and those sorts of things just seem like they'd be beneficial to know. We had a lot of attendance in June and July. Obviously we know why, but it's just those maybe up and down fluxes would be cool to look at and maybe even reflect on for how we can better outreach in the future.
Yeah, it's a great idea, you guys, because numbers is something that's reflected in the PCCEP plan, is supposedly getting X amount, of Facebook membership or whatever, but we can definitely show, we had over 500 people at that meeting we hosted with Lakiana, and so that definitely, I agree, needs to be reflected, that the numbers of the attendance are growing, and that shows that we're engaging. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. Good work, Theo. That was intense. Good work.
Yeah.
Barbara?
When you published how many people attended a meeting, the different meetings, can you put how many were strictly community, or if they were government and police or PCCEP?
The thing is, we don't have, for the Zoom meetings, maybe we have the names, but but even then, I don't know that we would be able to distinguish. Obviously we know Mary Claire, but I think it might be hard for us to distinguish the different categories of people, unless Theo, would you be able to do that?
I don't know, maybe. I don't know that it shows real utility. And we don't know, and we can't assume necessarily unless somebody's presenting what hat they're wearing. They could be somebody who is coming to the meeting because they're interested in be a government employee. And they could be somebody who works for the Office of Equity and Human Rights and is interested in something that Taji has to say or Vadim has to say. So I don't know that that's part of the charge of PCCEP, but the rest of the information I think is incredibly useful.
Yeah, the only thing is, we were talking at CopWatch about how, you know, the idea is that PCCEP's supposed to engage the community, but at some of the meetings, we recognized names like Chief Resch was there, but under her own name. And a number of people were there under their own name. And they're obviously, you know, I mean, sure, some government employees could come on their own, but that it's not the same thing as like reaching the communities that are impacted by the police necessarily, I guess.
Sure. One suggestion that was made to me was that we do anonymous surveys at our meetings to try to get some of that demographic information about which communities are attending our meetings. And that's something I don't believe we've been doing. So we could certainly do that going forward, if that seems like a good idea.
But Elliot, the meetings are recorded and you can view them on YouTube. People see the names and recognize, and pretty soon everyone will kind of know each other. Use the videos.
I think it's a good point. It's an important conversation to have, but it's also making a lot of assumptions. Those demographic surveys, you can say no at any time, and you have to sign up to do it, and people sometimes identify with multiple things, so you have to code it in a certain way. And also, if you're just operating on perception, people can be perceived as things that they don't identify with. So it's cumbersome to try to pull that demographic stuff, especially if you're not even in person. And that's one of the big knocks of the demographic information that police officers collect is it's just based on perception because they can't ask for information.
Yeah, I don't think it would be easy enough and also fair to put on Theo to come through the 500 or so people already. I'm thinking that we should just try to get general aggregate numbers of folks who've come to the meetings per month. Even at the subcommittees, we can just sort of do the full month, or we could just break it down. I don't know if it'd be easier one way or another.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, when you're done.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
I have a question about, was this, Theo, thank you for putting this together. Was it kind of, did you look at a previous report in order to kind of determine the topics and where the data was shared previously, or?
Yeah, Claudia, do you have that previous report that you posted in that previous meeting?
Yeah, I can go ahead and
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I was just wondering if you're like using it as a framework. And then I was just.
It was from Andrew Kallick, your former co-chair. So he used to do those.
Right, right.
Yeah, I can post it in the chat.
Thank you.
That's what I was wondering. I know he had that. And then I was wondering, Theo, I looked at what you put together, and how would you like us to give feedback? It's a read only as far as I saw.
Oh, you should just be able to enable editing, but I can.
Okay, I'll try again.
Yeah, try that. However, whatever's.
I like the comments that people have about Taji about linking. I think that would be really great. And then lastly, I'm wondering, I know I keep track of how many people are at the meetings that I go to, the numbers. Is that something that is kept on it's not on the YouTube, is it? Does it say how many people were at this meeting, or how would one determine that?
When you pull a recording, I believe you can get other info, like you can even pull chat data, I'm pretty sure. Like those are all things you can do.
That's right, on Zoom, you can do all that.
For the Zoom meetings, we could do that for the previous.
Don't pull chat data though, that scares me.
And to Elliot, to your earlier point about doing the quarters 1 and 2, I'm super comfortable doing that. I wanted this to be sent just so you all could see like what it would look like potentially moving forward. I can see a lot of things because I get to have the honor of collaborating with you all, but I'm not a member, right? So I just want that as the caveat. I can't speak with your same voice. So I'm happy to do the quarter 1 and 2, but yeah.
So I think Taji and I could collaborate in the next month to work with your draft of, the full year report in 3 and 4 to maybe add more of, PCCEP members, our voice to put it in, and then we would bring it to the full board in January for approval, or send it out, see if people have edits, and then for final approval. I'm interested in also charting the time between recommendation and response, and it would be fairly easy to track that and create a chart, because I think one of the issues that we've had is and there have been some hiccups in the process, but to get a sense, what's the average time of getting a response? And I think that would help get a sense of sort of how this whole process is working. Related to the report,
more interesting is to see the response, like the approved recommendation, and then it being put into policy. That would be something else worthwhile.
Yeah, that would be interesting to track as well. So in terms of the website, we've continued to get a lot of complaints, and I know that the city's working on the website, and I've heard they've been working on the website for several years. But there's one thing that I think, or two things that I think could be done. One, you did that amazing job of creating that matrix, or the timeline thing, but there is still some missing information, and I don't think it's been updated since then. So since it was created, so if we could sort of keep that timeline updated, and then if we could extract just the recommendations and put an Excel spreadsheet of the recommendations under the recommendations link, because when we had a meeting with the Mental Health Alliance, and they said, you have none of this information on your website, and I said, we did, but it's under timeline. And I think people who are looking for recommendations hit recommendations, they're not thinking to hit timeline. So maybe we could extract just the recommendations in an Excel spreadsheet and just post it there in the recommendations, so people who are interested in tracking our recommendations can see them. Does that sound?
Yeah, I think that's an easy fix. I think that's that would be easy enough to do if all PCCEP members are cool with that.
Yeah, except for one thing is I remember Mary Claire kind of saying that not every recommendation has an equal time frame of turnaround. Some things are going to take longer based on who they have to go through and what they have to do. So what I think would be fair, in all honesty, was to try to get some sort of these kind of recommendations have to go through XYZ. These recommendations can go straight to the mayor. These recommendations can go through, you know what I mean? And give some real perspective to what it really takes to make a recommendation solid, make it happen. Because if we're not being realistic about the process and the timelines, then everybody's going to have a misinterpretation of what isn't real. Okay? You know what I'm saying?
I think that's brilliant, Amy, and I think that just requires transparency of information on, and inclusion of information on what the process is going to look like. But that in itself is a next step, right? That's like getting that information. That's a next step. Like it's going to take a while because we're doing this and we're doing that in a written document. So that's certainly a next step. But
okay.
Okay, so we're coming up to 6:30. So
we still have a couple minutes. I just really wanted to answer or respond to a couple of those things really quickly. So yes, I think we should, I don't know what the process would be to editing the template for the recommendations, but I think we should add in, or maybe like in the template we use when we give to the mayor for him to sign and write his response, we could add in like initially that we could write in like the next step of like where it would go, what sort of things needed, and sort of add that to that part of the template. Also, at the behavioral health or no, it wasn't behavioral health. There's the Mental Health Alliance meeting. We discussed potentially adding in another box for reaching out to the behavioral health and mental health community for recommendations. I think that would be another thing we could add or discuss adding, which might just be, I don't know if there's a process for adding things to the template though. Or maybe expanding because maybe not all the recommendations pertain to that community. And so same thing with like the racial equity part of it. So maybe just putting it together as one, but at least acknowledging both aspects so that they could respond to those if it relates to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, being totally inclusive of every group. Yeah, I got
Which
you.
is what that last.
Taji, can I ask you a question though, of what something you just said?
Yeah.
When you talk about PCCEP putting the next steps, I think, I don't have a problem with you asking for, number one, their recommendations. So the first question is whether they're accepted. If they're accepted, then what is the next step? But I think that probably should be something that you ask either the mayor or the chief of police to articulate, because the PCCEP isn't going to know what the next steps are, for the recommendations. So rather than you guys saying here's what we expect of next steps, I think you should ask either entity to articulate what that would be.
I think it's more of like a ways and means check, like more of like I think what I was sort of trying to articulate, and Amy, please correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe like a ways and means check to it, where it's like not necessarily an assessment of the financial cost of it, like a normal ways and means committee, but like more of like, for example, the identification recommendation that we did back in August. That one has like it's clearly like it's policy directive focused. It could go to the mayor or to the chief, and it technically does not have like a hard long-term plan in place. It's really just like you should update your policy your policy directive, or don't update it, like accept or don't accept. But like it's not like a long verbose recommendation with many faceted pieces to it. And so it's trying to like make it a better way so that when we send it off to the mayor or the chief, they can have an easier way of understanding like what our understanding of what the recommendation would look like in action, I guess.
Whoa, Tasha, you went like way off left.
Maybe we can table this for time's sake and we can discuss this. There's no time sensitivity to this topic, so maybe we bring this up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Committee
and I will say that the Bureau, you said a 60.
I'm hearing two things. Wait, one. Sorry. Sorry. Go ahead, Mary Claire.
No, I was just going to say, you have set in your, I think in your bylaws that, or we have committed to getting a response to you within 60 days. I think that, we are certainly committed to maintaining that. You're right, there were some glitches, but the mayor's office and the Bureau have come up with a system with Theo. So I think that those past glitches where, all of the stuff was going to the mayor. I mean, if you want the police bureau to do something, it's at least has to be copied to us because it wasn't getting to the Bureau, for example. So we've created a system with Theo, both Nicole and myself came up with a plan that Theo thought would work. So I do expect that, these will go more smoothly in the future, but then you'll have to understand, and I have no problem, Theo, with you asking, what are the next steps or whatever, but you have to understand, things don't, move overnight. For example, you make a recommendation for a policy change, we then have to post, it takes probably 3 to 6 months to do policy changes in the Bureau. And so it's those kind of, things that we would, share with you that, the next step would be to post it, but then we have a process for, policy review for the whole community, for example. So those are just some of the things that I want you to be aware of, that things just don't necessarily, or many things don't happen overnight. So, but we don't have any problem continuing to keep you updated on the status, but it's not going to happen, yesterday, I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Claire. We're, for time's sake, need to move on because this next, setting the agenda, there are some topics we need to discuss. So on the agenda list is vote for secretary position. Those of you who remember from our last meeting, there was a split vote. we now have the full 13 members. So if 13 members show up, we hopefully can resolve this with a new vote. And so that is something we definitely need to do. There will be a core patrol services presentation by Sam Diaz from the mayor's office, and then feedback from the community. And just to remind everyone, that's like, the idea is that PCCEP, after getting public comment, develops recommendations, which it forwards to the city council for them to act on. So this is something which I think will occupy our agenda going forward. Police directives. Now, I feel like we've done a very bad job of, we look at police directives, but we don't always come up with a mechanism for actually commenting on them. And given the time frame of this, we can't take several months. Like the next one on search and seizure, I think the time is December 7th.
Tell them about the idea of the calendaring it.
I think Amy, your thing is unmuted or muted. Unmuted. Anyway, so figuring out a way for us to actually make recommendations, if we want to make recommendations about those police directives. The behavioral health unit, Barb wanted to say something about that. So Barb.
That's why I turned the microphone on, only I was a little too early, sorry. Oh, but I did want to ask one thing, Elliot. Are the directives that are being looked at now, are they taking input now, or is this input for later?
The search and seizure one is currently open.
Okay. Go ahead,
So,
Barb.
Amy, if they're up on our thing for universal review, they're available for public comment.
Universal review. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, Barb.
Hello. What initially I wanted to make sure that there was time on the December agenda for some education around a recommendation that the Behavioral Health Subcommittee is planning to put forward, which would basically be commenting on the Behavioral Health Unit and ECIT training. And the budget, basically, not asking for more money from the city, but potentially asking for the budgets not to be cut and or money shifted within the police department. And so to that end, I'm trying really hard to reach out to PCCEP members and make sure that everybody has whatever education they need to understand what the behavioral health unit of the Portland Police Bureau is and does. They have a very nice website. And also the value, in my opinion at least, of having the ECIT officers, which are the ones that have the extra 40 hours of crisis intervention training. And I always refer to them as the people who talk folks off the bridges. And we have lots of bridges and overpasses here. So Casey can't come in December. So we could try to ask somebody else, but I'd really prefer to have Casey, who's the lieutenant, who's the head of the part of the behavioral health teams, I guess is the best way to say that for him. So he can't come until January. So I'm hoping that we can put that on the agenda and also vote on a recommendation, which is not how I really wanted to do it. So
Barb, do you want to wait until January to do the recommendation and the presentation, or are you saying that we should do the recommendation in December and have the presentation in January?
We're going to finish up the ECIT training in January.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
That she didn't mean training, she meant education about the training. I was answering your question, Taji, right as you asked it.
What was the answer?
Okay,
so
could you clarify, so it sounds like January is the time for both of these.
Yeah, because that's not my first choice. And if you guys think it would be better to do the education, last piece of education of you guys and the public in January and not have a recommendation together until the February meeting, we can do it that way. But as far as education goes, I was planning to make as much stuff available on the PCCEP website and invite people to watch and review past behavioral health subcommittee meetings where we've had training done about the behavioral health unit. And like Amy said, in January, we're going to have some one-on-one time with ECIT officers. So does that make sense, Taji?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So it is sort of a question for the steering committee, in my opinion, as far as the best way for the subcommittee to bring it forward.
Yeah. I think,
my view is that I like the idea of you circulating, because so much of this stuff, the education stuff, has already been done, and people could see those videos and the website, so we could circulate that list. And then in January, I would be in favor of doing that educational presentation and the recommendation at the same time. That's my view. I don't know if other people disagree or.
Great. It seems like we're in agreement. There's a lot to talk about, so we'll do that. And then to your other point, Elliot, what was the, there was other points to the agenda we wanted to.
Yeah, so then, so Barb, we're on the page then to settle that January will be the time for the education, as well as for you, for the subcommittee to bring forward the recommendation. And if you could circulate the educational information, you know, sometime soon, then people could spend December and January educating themselves.
Awesome.
So thank you.
That's the plan.
Awesome.
And unless I want to, does anybody else have anything to say real quick? Okay, great. That sounds like an awesome plan, you guys.
I did want to mention just something for future planning purposes. The Department of Justice is planning to file its report on January 25th. And in the past, you guys have wanted us to present our findings to the body. And given that the hearing is February 25th, I don't know what that does. But just looking ahead, we would not be able to present until after the report is filed, and we anticipate that being on January 25th. So that's just an FYI.
Whoops. So when is our meeting, our full board meeting in February?
January.
No, January's so wait, you can't present, Jared, from what I'm understanding, you can't present the report until it's finalized on the 25th?
Until it's published, yeah.
No, so we would have to have it in February.
Yeah.
Yeah, because just if I can time in real quick, it looks like you guys are scheduled to have your PCCEP January meeting on the 26th, and then the February meeting is scheduled for the 24th or 23rd. Sorry.
So we could actually have the DOJ present on the 26th.
Would that be okay, Jared?
That'll definitely be okay for me. Jonas always has a tougher approval chain than I do, but one of us would certainly be available, and the report will certainly be published by February 23rd. I didn't know that's where the dates fell.
Sweet. Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll make sure to
How
get
close to the New Year's is
Amy, I think you're not muted.
So let's talk about the final point, which is the settlement agreement report by PCCEP. Obviously, Cocal in their third quarter report found the city out of compliance. There's not going to be, I don't think there will be another report, certainly before January. It's good to know that.
Yes, there will be.
So when is the
report will be out by January 10th. Before January 10th, Cocal will issue another quarterly report.
So then we need to have Cocal as well at the January meeting. So
maybe, excuse me, maybe they could present, Cocal could present at the settlement subcommittee meeting in January. That might work.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
No,
the past,
we've been through this before. When I tried to launch it through the behavioral health subcommittee's time, it didn't work. And we all agreed we would need a separate town hall for the public. Remember?
in the,
That was a
Yeah, I
big
think,
fiasco.
yeah, in the past,
okay.
it's been the Settlement Agreement and Policy Subcommittee that's hosted
Oh,
the town halls, and then the one before the most recent one, the Behavioral Health Subcommittee hosted that one, but then the most previous one, the most recent one, had its own meeting and had its own meeting slot for 2 hours because
Right,
subcommittee meetings just aren't long enough. So it needs a 2
right.
hour time allocation at least for the presentation and then Q&A afterward because lots of people always have questions and answers. So it would be a separate day. It wouldn't even be on the general meeting day at all. It
Right.
would be a separate meeting as a whole.
Gotcha.
Sounds like mid-January for the COCO report town hall. And then at our January 26th meeting, the DOJ would present, and we would need to discuss whatever we want to say about it at that January meeting if we want to, unless, do we have another meeting in February before the hearing?
Yeah, the general meeting is before the hearing.
Okay, so we could then hear, so the DOJ will happen at the January meeting, COCO will happen earlier, and then we could, in our February meeting, come discuss and come up with whatever we want to say about the settlement agreement based on all of that information. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, back to the December meeting, unless someone else wants to say something.
Claudia had something.
Can I just say that's, Elliot, just so you understand, the hearing would be a couple days later, so you'd have to be prepared if in fact you're going to give the court anything to have it ready that quick.
We probably want to talk about the COCO report, not at the February meeting, but we want to talk about it at the January meeting.
Exactly. I think we would have a discussion of the COCO report along with the DOJ report, and then draft something probably in the steering committee, or it could be in the settlement and policy committee, and then be ready to vote on it at the February meeting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then will we have someone share it at the hearing, or is that not a setting that would occur? I don't know.
Yeah, that's how it's happened in the past.
Cool. Back to the December meeting agenda, though. I just wanted to make sure we could have it clear, unless anyone else said anything on this point.
Oh no, just the maybe 10 minutes to vote on the new committee for the Truth and Reconciliation.
Yes, that's something else. Is this? I'm not writing all of these. I'm hoping someone is. And then also back to the point you brought up, Elliot, about policy directives. Mary Claire, could you clarify to that thing you mentioned earlier? You said it was the universal review period you mentioned was like a 3 to 6 month, or what was that? Could you explain that a little bit, and then just sort of where that comes from, if that's city code that says that's how it works, or it's per policy?
No, it's not city code. We have directives that outline our policy process. And so usually on the 1st of the month and the 15th are the days in which the Bureau posts the directives that it's, about to work on. And so if you, like I said, you could look and see what was posted, December 1st. I don't know if anything's being posted on the 15th, only because Ashley's on vacation. But so that's how it works. And then, it's posted, and we ask for public comment on the current policy, and then we take all the comments. We have what's called an executive reconciliation period, where the policy team, as well as our subject matter experts, take those comments and draft what we propose as a final version that is reviewed by the chief's office, and then it will go up on the website for a second universal review, which is actually the version of the policy that we are proposing to enact. And we'll take last comments. So the first one you see is only the one that's currently in place and asking you for any comments you might have. And we take all those comments, put them into the revision, and the second universal will be what we're actually
So is
considering
there
to enact.
ever changes from the second universal review to the point in the enacting, and then also is there a process to the enactment, or is it just like the chief signing something?
No. If something comes up in the second universal review that that the policy team and the chief's office, basically, I mean, it's ultimately up to the chief, what policy direction we get. But yes, if something were to come, we could make slight changes after the second review as well. But those would probably be more minor because we've already, posted what we had originally proposed. And then the final version would go up on the website with an explanation as to, what comments we received and why they were or were not, included in the revision. So,
and I just wanted to add that we've had Mary Claire and people that work on the directives come and talk to the settlement meeting about that. And what we lack, it looks like, is a process for PCCEP commenting on those. The timeline is somewhat short. It's, the 1st and 15th. And so that's what I think would be important if we could set up a process for how we're going to get the community input and then how we're going to comment.
We have the process. What we said to you is that we would take yours during that, during that second, period of reconciliation. So, but
no, it's not. You've got your process. I think we have to figure out our process.
Sure.
So the obvious place for this is to come out of the policy and settlement subcommittee. But it seems like either that meeting was canceled or it didn't happen this month. So,
what's tomorrow?
The question is, if we're gonna bring this to the full board, how are we going to do that? Does someone from that committee want to take on the task of editing and soliciting feedback from people to present something at the December meeting?
Well, Vadim, I know that we've had Mary Claire and others speak. I think we do need a process. I guess we could talk about it at our next meeting, but it wouldn't be until January. I was a little confused as to who was, I thought it was at the steering committee would talk about the process. So that's, I guess we're looking for direction.
Okay, so we're behind the 8 ball here, and the question is, does any individual your Vadim want to take on editing these directives or providing, and you could solicit from other people, but like being able to present something.
You could just move your meeting time to the first week of the month, so you would have time to talk and review at the meeting, and then share that info with the PBB, and then you could talk about it at the general body meeting of what you
special meeting to do that.
Well,
the issue, I think the issue is that if it seems like the whole PCCEP should be voting on these recommendations. So the process, I think, should be that the settlement and policy committee has the discussion, proposes something for the full board votes on it, then it goes to the PPB.
It's not really a recommendation, it'd be a comment. I mean, we could make a recommendation.
Right, a comment, sorry.
Yeah, comments. Okay.
It's a comment.
Yes.
You don't want to, if neither of you want to do it, I'll do it. But
no, I would be happy to do it. I had one prepared already that I sent, but I can do that, Vadim, at our next meeting. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it seems like this is your piece here, but I'm just curious about the timeframes here. Our next meeting in January, or at what point in time is this going to be enough for the next PCCEP meeting?
This needs to be in before, this needs to be done at the December board meeting because the review period is up after that. So,
I can do it. I'll do it and have it ready for the meeting.
And I just send it out to PCCEP people. If anyone else wants to add comments, that they could send them to you. You'll present it. So for the agenda, we have the vote for the secretary position, which will, I think, only require 10, 15 minutes. We have the core patrol services presentation that I think would take about an hour. The police directives, probably half an hour. And that is all I have now because we're not doing the behavioral health in December or the settlement agreement. Is there anything else?
Oh, you look like Jared had something to say.
Jared.
Oh, I was just gonna have a question or a suggestion on the policy stuff, but I'll speak with Ann offline. Go ahead with the meeting stuff. I don't need to take time. I lowered my hand. Thanks, Sophia.
Okay. Are there any other agenda items? I mean, we could also have a shorter meeting if we don't, 3 hours is a long time, but if there's other stuff we should talk about, then please, now's the time.
We were just at a meeting, a work group meeting with Marcia and Amy and Barb and others about an upcoming recommendation that we're going to re-elevate from the behavioral, it wasn't called behavioral health, but the group last fall. So we're going to be meeting with the AMA, I believe it is the first week of January, and kind of rewriting that recommendation. And we wanted to have that at the next meeting.
We're talking about the condolence letter that was brought forward by the original mental health subcommittee. We want to review it, redo it, and relaunch it. And we need everybody's input on it. So we're hoping to bring it forward for discussion because the public will be there at the December meeting.
So do you want that on the agenda?
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
Amy, okay, so let's
Yes.
add to the agenda then a discussion of the condolences recommendation. And will you have the recommendation prepared, or is this just a discussion?
We're going to be rewriting that, but I think it will just be a discussion. A discussion of, we'll have a rough draft to share and a discussion of that in our December meeting.
Yeah, we're going to take some of what was in the original proposal and we're going to add some other things, and then we're going to bring it forward, ask for review and a vote, and we'll see how it goes, but we're going to need some time to run all this through.
And I want to add one other thing to that as far as education goes. The joint forum that the Racial Equity Subcommittee and the Behavioral Health Subcommittee had last month was recorded, and it has our guest education speakers, somebody from BOIC and somebody from TIP.
Great, so maybe we could send that out as part of the education piece. Theo?
Yeah, to be clear, it's my understanding that this recommendation won't be voted on until January.
Okay.
So
we're collecting input. Yes.
Yeah, the point of this is just, so one of the hindrances of the previous recommendation is that there wasn't enough time to vet it as a recommendation, that there wasn't enough time for PCCEP members to have eyes on it. So this is doing the work of having PCCEP as a body involved and aware of the process and what's going on in the collaboration between previous members, Patrick, Amanda, those folks on MHA, and then this Ann and Amy and Barb, this behavioral health subcommittee. It's my understanding that then they'll collaborate with previous members to write a new recommendation and then vote on it in January. Is that accurate, Amy?
Yes, that's accurate. And we wanted to share just kind of a rough draft of it at the December meeting.
Okay, so there is going to be something written that will be shared.
Yes, yes, and
Okay.
we will get that to.
Okay, I think that's a pretty full agenda by the time we get through with committee reports and all of these other things. We will have filled our 3 hours or come close to it. So that seems good. We've got a plan for January. We'll just need to work on scheduling that Cocal town hall. So maybe we need to reach out to Dennis Rosenbaum and Cocal and see when they are available to do it. Or do you all want to discuss dates now? When would be good for us to do it? Mary Claire said the Cocal report is coming out on, what did you say, the 10th?
I believe that's what they've said, right, Jared? I think that's what we said on Monday, but yeah, I think you know.
I think that might be the first draft. And I don't know when it's going to be published.
Oh, okay.
It might be
okay, sorry.
It might be the 10th. I'm not remembering offhand. I'm sorry.
Maybe that is the draft. So it wouldn't be even available for public consumption till the week after. So it may be the end of the month before you could have that, Elliot, to be honest with you. Now that.
Okay, I'll reach out to Dennis then and see
Yeah.
when we could,
Yeah.
when it's going to be ready for public consumption, and then we could figure out when we could actually discuss it. We are close to the end of our time. Are there any further, any other comments or things we've missed? Great. Well, I look forward to seeing all of you at the full December board meeting, and thank all of you for your hard work. And thank you, Jared and Mary Claire and other folks who've shown up today for our meeting. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.